everyone. Welcome back to Open Line. We are examining tonight the case of a death row inmate from Nashville. It is the subject of a powerful new documentary that is going to come out, debut at the film festival, the Nashville Film Festival, which opens this week. The film festival will be virtual this year, but this film is part of that list. We have with us the filmmaker and the attorney for Abu-Ali Abdur'Rahman, who is the subject of this documentary, You Don't Know Me. And John Kent is the filmmaker, Brad MacLean there, the attorney. And there's so many fascinating avenues to go down here, and you touched on it a little bit, John, that this was a Christian military group, right? That's kind of what they're saying, that was going into neighborhoods trying to rid them of crime, I guess, right? What are we talking about there?
Well, it's hard to find. We did, my wife and I did 2.5 years of much of which was research. We were digging around. It's very difficult to find any information about the Southeastern Gospel Ministry. I do have someone who had tried to infiltrate, but tried to do some visits with them, and his life was threatened, and so he decided he would not be part of the film because he literally had moved away from Nashville and was nervous about being involved. So all I can tell you about it is there doesn't seem to be a lot of ministry that's going on, but this operation, I guess, for lack of a better word, was maybe their first operation. I know that they had been training in some of the parks, doing paramilitary training, and Percy Warner Park, or some of the national parks. Hard for me to believe as a native Nashvilleian that this was going on. But you will not find much in terms of research on that specific group. But apparently it has been described by the police detective as a Black Panther type of organization, for lack of a better descriptor. And all we know is a couple of people who were involved in the sort of the heads of the organization, and that Abu-Ali and Deval Miller were in fact their foot soldiers.
And they were foot soldiers. And John, tell us about the crime itself that night. And you had, for those who have been around a while, you may have heard Larry Britton. You may have heard his voice, and he makes an appearance in the film. His news report from 1986, isn't that right? That's when this happened, 1986.
Right.
But tell us about the victims and what happened that night.
So Abu-Ali and Deval Miller went over supposedly to scare a small-time alleged drug dealer named Patrick Daniels from selling drugs. They were trying to scare him from selling drugs in the Black neighborhood. He was at his girlfriend's home, I believe Norman is her name. And then, so they had, this Southeastern Gospel Ministry had targeted this individual, Patrick Daniels. And so Abu and Deval go over to this house to do that, to scare them. What went awry, I don't know. But at the end of the evening, Patrick Daniels is dead. Norman is down, and the knife is still in her back. Her 2 children were there, and they were in a bedroom, sequestered in a bedroom, unharmed.
That's the worst part of this. That's the worst part. There were 2 children there. There might be a bit of a problem with your mic, so I'm going to ask Brad a question now. But I'm having a little hard time hearing you. I'll come right back to you. But yeah, that was the most disturbing part. Was that there were 2 children there, and then one person was killed. The female was stabbed and did not die. But I guess, and let me ask you, Brad, what can you tell us about the crime? I guess tell us what happened and give us the overview of that.
Well, I mean, there's no dispute about what happened because Deval Miller, the co-defendant, later in his own sentencing hearing described what happened. It was not consistent with the testimony he gave during Abu-Ali's trial. But what happened was Abu-Ali and Deval Miller were part of the small paramilitary group called the Southeastern Gospel Ministry that was led by Alan Boyd, and they put together this plan to go to Patrick Daniels to scare him from selling drugs. Now, Abu-Ali has always been very concerned about children because he was horribly abused as a child. And so he's always wanted to protect children. So this was part of his thinking. When he got there and he saw both Norman and her two children there, he was surprised. He did not expect that to happen. He didn't expect them to be there. And that caused him to behave differently. The two children, he led the two children into the back bedroom of the apartment and closed the door, and then things happened, and he doesn't really have a memory of what happened.
He supposedly blacked out, right? He supposedly has no memory, yeah. And some people find that hard to believe, that he would just forget what happened. Right.
It's the Abu-Ali suffers from a severe case of post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the horrible abuse that he experienced both as a child at the hands of his parents, sexual and physical abuse, and then also sexual abuse that he experienced in prison afterwards. He was repeatedly raped in prison. And so he suffered this horrible case of post-traumatic stress disorder, and he has a documented history of blacking out. And the mental health experts that we asked to look at the case and to evaluate Abu-Ali agree that he, in all likelihood, did black out during the actual commission of the offense.
And again, two people went in.
But
what happened to the other person that went in? What was he convicted of?
Deval Miller, as John previously mentioned, he fled the state when Abu-Ali was arrested, and Alan Boyd gave, or his partner gave Deval Miller the money to escape the state. He went up to Pennsylvania, and later, as the case was approaching Abu-Ali's trial, the DA finally decided to arrest Deval Miller up in his hometown in Pennsylvania and bring him down. And he worked out a deal. If he testified against Abu-Ali and testified that he eyewitnessed Abu-Ali stabbing the victims, then he would get lesser charges and he would not be facing the death penalty. And that's exactly what happened. So he entered into a plea agreement, and he pled guilty to lesser charges. He spent a certain amount of time in prison. I can't remember how many years, less than 10 years, and then he was released.
Wow, so he's
out. And then
he
committed another crime.
Oh, okay.
Well, he committed another crime, and then he was put in prison again, and just a few years ago, he was released on parole. So yes, he's free.
And he was a critical part of the testimony against Abu-Ali, right?
He was the only eyewitness to the actual assault. Norman was also stabbed in her back, but she was blindfolded at the time, and she did not see who actually committed the stabbings. So Deval Miller was the only witness who testified to who committed the stabbings, and of course he testified that it was Abu-Ali. And for that he got.
How does that make you feel again about the death penalty? Two people went in there, and then this deal was cut, and one person was given a much less sentence for the testimony. How common is that in death penalty cases? What does that make you think about the situation here?
Well, I mean, what I've come to conclude, as I said, I was appointed to my first death penalty case in 1990. I was a commercial lawyer before I got involved in this. And since then, I've worked on a number of death penalty cases, and I've studied the death penalty as it's been applied in Tennessee extensively. I've looked at every single death penalty case over the last 43 years. And the only conclusion that you can reach is it's very arbitrary. Very few people get the death penalty, and those who do, it's really a crapshoot. I wrote an article about it, and I called it a lottery. It's really nothing more than a lottery. Who gets the death penalty, who doesn't? It has nothing to do with the actual facts of the case or the merits of the case. It's just pure chance. Fewer than 3% of those people who are convicted of first-degree murder get the death penalty in Tennessee.
All right, we're going to take a break, then we're going to come back, and I'm going to ask about, so why was it overturned in Davidson County? So Davidson County agreed to make this be a life sentence. You know, how did that come about? All right, we'll take a break. If you want to call in, there's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. We'll be back right after this.